Alright, so we're here at the Interfaith Peace Garden. It was built in 2013, dedicated to Avi Schaefer, son of a professor here at LMU. It's a place where students can relax and find some peace throughout their day, look at some quotes, and hopefully gain some wisdom. We chose this spot in light of recent events that have been going on in the world. There's a lot of terror and fear surrounding many different regions, and this is a spot where people can come and hopefully find peace through these quotes from influential people and leaders throughout history.
So our first reaction when we arrived at the site was that there are these 4 pillars sticking up from the ground, and surrounded by these 4 pillars are small, rectangular, almost bench-like structures with this slab of granite on top of it. It's very earthly looking in terms of its texture, being probably mostly concrete, and it almost gave us the feeling of solitude, where you have something stable within a world that is so unstable, so to speak. Avi Schaefer, who the piece of art was dedicated to, had many years of activism in his short-lived life, and he had a huge impact on his society, and the people that he had surrounded himself with and who he had inspired are the people that most likely petitioned for this piece in memory of him, along with his father and the faculty in the school, of course. But it's also dedicated to the fact that they wanted to remember him, and in that action they also ultimately became the audience themselves when they petitioned for the piece. For every artwork, it's important to know who the creator, the artist of that work of art is. But in this case, it was difficult to come upon that information. So rather than thinking of this piece of art as being created by someone else, since it is a memorial site, we think that it makes sense to dedicate him as the creator almost of this piece. That being said, Avi spent 3 years in the army as he moved over to Israel to serve as an activist in trying to convince people that it is possible for Palestinians and the people of Israel to finally come together in peace. So this piece is obviously requested by LMU, and therefore being the community both in front and behind at the same time. The piece is directed towards the students and the faculty that participate in our community, and the interesting part is that we're creating something for ourselves. It's a way to reassure ourselves of the fact that things are going to be okay, and that you can find stability in your life even when things feel like they're not. And I think that that's what this piece really stands for, and the quotes that you can find on this piece also verify this in the sense that we're trying to find light in darkness.
This work of art evokes very obvious themes from the second that you look at it and really read the quotes that are on the stone. It evokes the feeling of hope and peace in a world that is lacking those two things greatly, especially in the past few months and even weeks and even days. Avi was a hopeful person. He was quoted saying that an enemy is just someone whose story you don't know yet. And it challenges, I know, my own and many individuals' conceptions of what people are, people who we don't know. And this hopefulness, this activism towards hope and peace is what made individuals feel like it was necessary to commemorate him in his tragic death with this memorial. It takes a special person to light such a fire under a community. And like the activists that are on these stones, Martin Luther King, Elie Wiesel, Avi had some very powerful words about where we should go in our future and how we should treat people around us.
So the reason why we chose this artwork is because because it relates to the book in that the book raises three main questions. One, that there is unnecessary evil in the world, and if God allows this unnecessary evil, what does he define as unnecessary? Two, that can God feel our pain and suffering? If he can't feel our pain and suffering, then why should we believe in God? And lastly, because it relates to the liberation Christology and social justice, in that people of all faiths on campus can come to this spot and find peace and insight about suffering, their own suffering, and about the suffering of the world.
It was God's compassionate and present nature that allowed him, through Jesus, to weep with Mary and be there and support her. If God, according to Schillebeck's, was unable to feel suffering, then he wouldn't have acted through Jesus in this way. And that goes to show that Moltmann's interpretation is a much more vital and necessary interpretation for today's world where so much suffering is happening.
I personally am not going to spend much time in my journey trying to decipher whether or not God feels suffering, but more so reflecting upon my own suffering and truly internalizing it, which often gives me the empathy to be able to identify and confine in other people, which in an effort to alleviate their suffering as well through my understanding. And in that sense, I am grateful for the fact that I do interpret and feel and internalize suffering. And I think it's an important part of being a human being and a conscious creature is to feel the pain, because it often makes the better times feel even more so. And in this current climate with a lot of uncertainty politically, a lot of division being magnified, it's important to internalize not only our own suffering, but those of our brothers and sisters and fellow man. And I do see ultimately the power that suffering has, and I think it's a big part of being a human and the way that we've able to come this far in society. It's pretty astounding how far we've come since Christ and how much we more have to go as well.
So the artwork also relates to current event issues that have been going on in our world. Unfortunately, we've seen many tragedies, and one that we're specifically going to address is Las Vegas and all the other shootings that have happened over the summer and the hurricanes. This relates because it seems like this is very unnecessary, and it needs to spark a bigger topic of mental health and gun control. And we need to also funnel a lot of the money that we have towards helping Puerto Rico and Texas and things like that. So that's why we've connected it, because we need to find peace in our world, and this is one of the ways we can, so that we don't see tragic events like this continuing to occur, and if they do, we need to be able to help those people as directly as possible.
So such tragedies can lead us to wonder, is there really a God? Or besides questioning God's existence, it can make us wonder if God really cares. But it's important to remember that despite these tragedies, God did give us free will, and he entrusted us to take care of his creation, which includes those people within it. And we are all made in God's image, and we should live by the golden rule, which is doing unto others as they would do unto you, or to love thy neighbor. And though these tragedies are very difficult and it's a really hard time for everyone, we need to really carry out God's message and his plan for us and help those who are afflicted and spread love and awareness.